path that led you to where you are now is certainly an unusual one. What led you to the world of casino gambling?
Well, my mother put a book called Beat the Dealer in my Christmas stocking when I was 16, and I went off to Las Vegas. I've since forgiven her for that, by the way. I went off to Las Vegas when I was 19, and was kind of taken by the lights and the action, and found my way into the world of professional card counting, and ended up spending those first few years with a guy named Ken Houston, who was probably the most famous card counter, and then ended up running my own teams for some years. And always I was the guy who took my guitar around with me when I traveled around the world. But it was some years later that I finally made that leap and decided to put the music first.
Were you looking at that as a career? Was it a career to you at that time, or was it more of a sport, or how did you look on it?
Oh, the gambling?
Yeah.
Well, I looked at it, I suppose, like anybody looks at something when they're 19 and 20. I'm not sure that I had a plan, But, by the time I was 21, yeah, it was a career, and it was a job, certainly. I remember the first time I got paid to play blackjack, I called my mom. I said, "Hey, Mom, I'm a professional," and so it was a job for many years. I like to say it's the only real job I've ever had.
I believe you got so good that you had to go to extreme lengths to hide your identity at times.
Yeah, and it was a smaller world then. Some of my friends who still do it, find it easier these days because there's so many casinos, and especially there's so many casinos in the States. But at the time, it was a pretty small world, and by the time I was 22, 23, my picture was in every casino in the world. And I had to actually change my name and do some disguises and in order to get into some of these places.
Was it a difficult life to give away?
Say that again, John?
Was it a difficult lifestyle to give away, to quit?
No. One of the differences between playing music for a living and playing blackjack for a living is that when you get good at blackjack, they ask you to leave, and when you get good at music, they ask you to come back. And that's kind of a joke, but it's kind of a joking on the square, as they say, because that's an element of being accepted for who you are and being able to be who you are. That makes it a lot easier to be a musician. When I was a card player, we would use a alias to go to the dry cleaners, and now I get positive feedback when I am who I am and express myself, and that's a big deal. It's a hard it's kind of the life of Riley, as some people would understand it, the playing cards, and yet it was hard at the same time. A lot of people end up getting out of it.
You compare the satisfaction you get now from the feedback you get from your audience compared to making a killing at the casino.
Well, I hardly even remember the later, although, as I'm thinking about it, I guess it was a rush, and whereas the music is the same kind of rush. The music is, as I say, just a little more authentic and real. Both lives are pretty stressful. Certainly being a performer is a stressful life, and yet you get to play music for people. It's a reward also. I find that to be the reason I keep doing that. I love playing music for people.
So during those years, was music always a hidden ambition for you?
Yeah, as I said, I would take my guitar around, and I became known as the guy who would always have his, the gambler who always had his guitar with him. And I would play in airports sometimes. I'd play for my family. I'd write songs in hotel rooms and that kind of thing. And then, but I had never performed before. And at some point, I think it was 1986, I heard about this thing called the Great Peace March for Global Nuclear Disarmament. It was it was not a musical thing, but it was a political statement by hundreds of people who were going to walk from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. It's 3,000 miles. And, they said they were, they had big corporate sponsors, and Madonna was doing commercials for these people, and it was like Club Med for Peace, and I thought I was into that. I signed up for it, and it turned out to be something completely different than I thought. And in the end, a group of musicians got our gear there and ended up playing music all the way across the country, and that was my baptism into performing. We wrote songs about why we were on this walk, and we played them all across the country, and that's where I got my first taste of what it was like to perform, to play songs you had written for other people and see if you could connect with them, through the music.
So I guess if you were to pin down a defining moment when you knew it was time to say goodbye to the old life, that would be it? Yes,
and as it turns out, it took me 10 more years to actually make the move. But when you get going with a certain lifestyle, there's a certain momentum, and believe it or not, it was always easy to play cards, and it was always such a huge risk, such a huge leap of faith. And in the end, I guess it was 96 that I started performing and being a musician full time, and it was, it's a huge leap of faith.
Just going back even further, I believe when you first started learning guitar, you had some problems which stopped you playing for a while.
Right. I went to college as a guitar major. I really was kind of lost, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I thought, okay, why not study guitar? I like the guitar, and so I went to I signed up for school as a classical guitar major, and shortly into the semester, I lost feeling in both my hands, and I ended up dropping out and going off to Las Vegas.
Let's talk about your first songwriting efforts. When did that become a serious thing for you, when you really decided to get down into songwriting?
Well, 10 years ago I would have said, 20 years ago, and 5 years ago I would have said 10 years ago, and now it's like I'm working on it, I'm getting there, because there's so much that you can learn in the process, and there's so much to know, and there's so much growth that is there and available for you if you're interested in it and working at it. I would say I made a pretty huge leap around 96 when I got serious about playing music full time. I went to some of the major singer-songwriter festivals in the U.S., the Kerrville Folk Festival and some of the others, and I went to Nashville, Tennessee, where there's some amazing songwriters, and I heard guys like Ellis Paul, guys like Buddy Mondlock and Tom Kimmel, and I thought, oh, okay. I didn't even know what a good song was before I met these guys, and I feel like that changed my approach to songwriting, and got me, I guess, I was gonna say a lot more serious about it. But it's not just that. It's kind of about knowing what's possible with a song.
Yeah.
And I continue to hear things that, my friend Dave Carter, who passed away a couple years ago, is a big inspiration to me. When I hear the songs he's written, I don't exactly try to copy him, but he makes me understand what's possible, and to convey in the song form. And that's continued to be a real interesting process for me.
So do you think, looking on it, there would be a universal quality amongst the songwriters that first started grabbing your attention?
I'm sorry, John, I didn't quite hear that.
The first songwriters that really grabbed your attention, that you started to set up and take notice of, would there be a universal quality amongst them all that you could pinpoint?
Well, earlier on in my life, like when I was a teenager, I listened to Paul Simon quite a bit, and he was quite a big influence, and Jackson Browne and Dan Fogelberg with his early albums. and then later Elvis Costello and Bruce Cockburn. And I think that the one thing that the one common thread between all those people is that the music was authentic, and it it struck a chord in me. And I think what that was about is that it is authentic. I also happen to like nice melodies, and I like people that use words not just to convey a meaning, but words that have certain sounds and certain rhythms to them. Paul Simon was one that did that quite well. And for instance, his later stuff, his stuff in the last 10 years or so hasn't connected with me so much, and I think part of that is that it's just hard to be authentic, as a rich white guy and with all with unlimited time and unlimited money to make your music. It's hard to be authentic and come out with something that's worthwhile. I don't exactly blame him for it. I don't know that I wouldn't take that road, if it happened to me, but it's much more interesting these days to hear what some of my peers are doing in their kitchens, and what they are doing while they're struggling to pay the bills and that kind of thing. I'm much more interested in that than what somebody can do with an unlimited budget and unlimited time and the best studios and the best producers.
Quite a prominent quote about you where you're described as having the voice of a James Taylor, the brains of a Bob Dylan, and the soul of a Willie Nelson. Does that definition sit okay with you?
Oh, I'm sort of embarrassed by it, but it certainly is. Those guys are heroes to me. So, yeah, that feels good.
Does it put a pressure on you, perhaps, to give you something to live up to?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
John, you've seen people's press kits. The people will say anything.
That's true. You're a classic example of how an artist these days can, basically be their own record company, run a successful career, run their career as a business. Apart from there's obviously advantages to that, but are there any pitfalls apart from the time that it must eat up in your life?
Well, mostly it is really about the time that it takes to do the business of music and not letting that pull you away from the music itself. So that's a struggle that I deal with a lot. Trying to stay close to the music, when you have to spend an inordinate amount of time, in front of your laptop and on your cell phone.
Has the temptation ever been there to try and attach yourself to a label?
Well, I actually, my first few albums were on a label called Tangible Music, like Right Side of Zero, which was a CD that I recorded in Los Angeles in people's living rooms, $20 an hour ADAT studios, a CD that has my favorite songs that I had written over the course of my whole life, and I just wanted to make a record. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it exactly, but all of a sudden I had 1,000 of them in my living room, and I was wondering what to do, and I got on the internet, which was pretty new at that time, and I said, I just was reading some posts on the internet, and there was a guy that said he was a record label, and I emailed him. I said, "Oh, you're a record label? I have a record," and he put out Right Side of Zero, and he actually got it charted on the Americana charts here in the U.S. It was Tangible Music, and Gary stopped doing business about a couple years ago, I guess. But we put out, the Traveler's Code was put out on the Tangible Music label, and a couple of the other of my CDs were at least marketed by Gary Brody, Tangible Music.
You're renowned as a great storyteller in song. What to you is the key ingredient to good storytelling? Good stories. Good stories.
Yeah.
Rest takes care.
I find that stories are everywhere. I find that all I have to. There's too many stories. I know there are some people who, they listen for that one nugget, that one story, and then make sure they have to write it down. But I don't find that way. I find that any day that I go out into the world that I want to find a really good story. I just have to put my antenna up, you know, and it comes to me.
You're one of those.
I guess also there's not letting the, you know, you don't want to let the facts get in the way of the truth.
Yeah.
You want to convey the truth of a story and understand that you have some leeway because the song form is, you know, a limited, you know, way of doing that.
You're one of those writers that carries a book around everywhere with and just jots ideas down?
I'm not, actually.
No?
I don't do that. I'm thinking of starting, though.
Is songwriting something that gets easier over time for you?
I'd say no.
No?
I'd say it's just as hard now to sit down and write a song as it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Is there a set procedure or method you go through?
Well, with many of the story songs, first of all, we come up with a story, come up with a beginning, middle, and end, and kind of an idea of how you want the story to unfold, and then a verse and a chorus, and then music to that verse and chorus, and then the rest of the verses, and maybe a bridge. That's pretty typical of the way I write, but it happens all different ways as well. I do a lot of co-writing with other people, and some of that is sitting in a room and pounding it out, and some of it is over email, back and forth. Happens all different ways.
Which is a more comfortable situation for you, that co-writing experience or sitting down working on your own project?
I can do either. I know Robert Morgan Fisher, who I've written a lot of songs with, we like to sit in the same room mostly and pound it out. But, you know, for Paul Zolo, who I also write a lot with, that's like taking a bath with someone, you know. He just really doesn't want to do that. And it's fine. It seems to work for me either way. You know, I would say that most of the things that I write are you know, I'm thinking about performing them. You know, I'm thinking about recording and performing them. So they tend to be my stories, even if I do work with another person in writing the song.
How heavy is the editing process in your writing?
Not too much for me. You know, one of the things I like about co-writing is that one person can. It's not about coming up with good things to fill a song. It's about the other person saying, you know what, that is not a good thing. You think that's a good thing, but it's not. It'll disconnect. You know, you'll lose a portion of your audience if you leave that in there, and so then you take it out. But most of that stuff happens pretty quickly for me, and I tend to, even if later I realize that technically I could make it a better song by changing a line or a phrase or something,
yeah,
I tend to leave it the way it was originally because I believe that there was something that made it pop out that way that was important or authentic or, you know, worthwhile, that was real maybe. And you don't want to mess with that too much. I mean, sometimes there's obvious examples that things that really need to be changed, but most of the time, even if I objectively say, you know, this change is going to be better than the original, I still stick with the original because that's the way it came out, and there's something to that. You know, there's something about that was good.
And performing live, Darryl, how much of the year do you spend on the road?
Well, I've stopped performing a lot this year, but last year and the many years before it, I was doing 150 shows a year. I'll probably end up doing maybe 30 or 40 this year.
Was that a conscious decision to cut down this year?
Yeah, I was just, you know, waking up too many times and not really knowing where I was. And so I needed some time, you know, in one place. I needed to spend like a week in one place once in a while. I wasn't doing any of that ever.
Where do you think your life would be now if you'd stayed in the casino life? hasn't occurred to you?
Hard question.
Yeah?
It's a hard question. I'm not sure that I know.
Maybe best not to know.
Maybe it's better.
Yeah.
I'd probably have more money.
Maybe not as satisfied.
But I would have missed. Some amazing years. And some amazing stuff. I have had connections with people through the music that have been really astounding. Things that I wouldn't trade for anything. One thing that comes to mind is I met my 4 half brothers that I'd never known before. I wrote a song about their little sister and ended up sending it to them, and they came to a show, and my older sister came down, and so after going through life with 3 sisters and no brothers, it's now 4-3 brothers. Late rally by brothers, and brothers lead 4-3.
Wow.
I think that's the way it's going to end up. And this when people make the songs a big part of their life, that feels really good. The wedding song, that Ring on My Hand, that's on Traveler's Code, that's been played at a lot of weddings, and a lot of people think of that as their song. And I get to sing when I do a show. I will often have a couple there attending that has played that song at their wedding, and I can dedicate it to them, and that's always a sweet thing. And I could those kinds of things and those kinds of connections, and through the music, those stories could go on and on. And I guess the main thing is that I would have missed all that.
And you can't put a dollar value on something like that, can you?
I would say not.
No. Just to finish up, Darryl, what's on your books for the rest of this year? What are your plans there? Is there a new recording in the works?
Yeah, I'm working on a new recording. I'm still trying to choose a producer. I've got a bunch of new songs, and I am probably going to write some more. I'm going to continue touring lightly, and of course keep writing.
Fantastic. I'll look forward to that. Thanks so much for your time this morning, or this morning for me, afternoon for you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate your interest in my music.
It's been great catching up with you, Darryl, and we're so glad you made the change to music, and we look forward to some many more fine albums.
Okay, John, you take care.
All the best. Hope to see you down here one day. It'd be great.
Say that again, John?
Hope to see you down in Australia one day. It'd be fantastic.
That would be fun. Well, let me know if if there's a person I need to know, or how that works.
Okay, I'll email you some contacts if you like.
That sounds great.
Terrific.
And I'd love to get a CD of the show when it's all done.
I'll do that for you as well.
All right, John.
Thanks a lot, Darryl. All the best.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.